Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
Feeling awesome, my man. Feeling awesome. I just feel good with where life's headed and where we're at right now. And it's fall of what, 2020? So seasons are changing, which I think a lot of people are excited for. And apparently everything pumpkin is back in vogue again.
Yeah.
So in my house, everything's pumpkin right now. So pumpkin cake, pumpkin coffee. Yeah, pumpkin is good.
Pumpkin cheesecake, bro.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am feeling a little bit of fear and sadness around a big decision that is coming up, and I'll get into a little bit more of that today. But it ties perfectly right into our reflection of last week, because it made me realize that I've been doing a pretty good job of staying present and being here now, because I haven't thought too much into things that I want to do in the future. But now that they're approaching, and now that I'm planning to leave Fort Collins here pretty soon, I'm like kind of getting a little sad, and also a little bit scared of uncertainty, you know. And actually, I'm glad we're going to talk about this, because I still don't think I've exactly pinpointed where some of this fear is stemming from. So it'll be good to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's lots of changes coming, and that's definitely scary times for most people. I think, what did they say? The three scariest things in life are like getting married, buying a house, and like having a child or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you think about all change.
Yeah.
They didn't say like the scariest thing in life is shark attacks.
Right.
It's the little changes we make in our own world. So yeah, it'd be good to talk about that and share that, because we are coming in. Well, now we're in the fourth quarter of 2020, and 2020 itself has created so many new fears that we didn't even know we should be things we should be afraid of.
For real.
And how do we go into that next year? Are we letting fear control us? Does fear make us small? Or do we embrace it and kind of figure out, okay, what good comes from being afraid of some changes? And is that fear just of the unknown, or fear because I shouldn't be doing it? So I think there's different kinds of fear.
Right.
It'll be fun to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. How was the reflection on Be Here Now for you last week?
That was good, man. I really just took that quote to heart. I've written it in my journal every day. Just that's part of my attention, is to make the person in front of me the most important person.
Nice.
And yeah, I feel good with it. I feel like I've done fairly well. And it's interesting because it applies to business too. Right? Like if I'm at the gym and you're coming in to talk to me about the schedule or trying your free week, but the whole time I'm talking to you, I'm also like looking at the email over here, or on my phone texting the other guy that wants to come in, or what kind of relationship is that? And
we do that so much.
We do. But it was funny. Like we just had, I think, 6 people sign up yesterday.
Oh, wow.
That all started their free week last Monday.
Nice.
So I was like, so then you're like, okay, well, clearly like making them feel that's the most important person right then pays dividends.
Yeah, 100%.
So it was good.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just think it's important. I think we get so caught up in multitasking, right? That was a buzzword for so long. And being able to do all these things at one time makes you so much more valuable, that we forgot, like, the time somebody gives you is the greatest gift they can share with you.
Right.
Right? Like, I can never get it back. If I give you my time, but I only get like 50% of your attention, well, was it really worth it? Was that a good exchange? And what if, God forbid, that was the last time I get to give somebody my time?
Right.
And I gave it to somebody that didn't pay attention or didn't care or value it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge.
I had that talk at the gym last night with people, just the value of their time. and to screen who they give their time to and who they block from their time, and really evaluate, and are they getting the most value for where their time goes, or should they be giving more than they're taking? And is a good exchange?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've wasted so much time, and I think as you get older, you start realizing, like, man, time goes quick.
It does.
You know, my oldest daughter just turned 25, and I still remember meeting her for the first time, and, you know, all the little things she did as a little toddler that could barely walk, and now I'm like, golly.
All right.
25 years, man, it goes quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So, yeah, I'm definitely working a lot more on being present, and I think it's a work in progress, but I feel like I'm making good steady progress with it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. Yeah, for me it was a good reflection as well. I had a little challenge. I've said this before, but my thing when interacting with people is to simply ask, what's been the best part of your day?
Yeah.
And I'll force myself to ask it even when I don't feel like conversating, because, you know, sometimes you don't
even
feel
with the
like
mask
communicating. Even with the mask on.
That's so much harder to talk to people.
Yeah, but I still do it,
Good.
and it still brightens people's day. And I was really not feeling it. I was like frustrated. Something dumb. Courtney asked me to go get like a salmon, and she's like, oh, we need a different type of salmon or something, and I was frustrated. I had to walk across the whole grocery store, and I kind of had a headache going, and then I was like, all right, I gotta ask. And I was like, oh, what's been the best part of your day? To the lady, she's like, thank you so much for asking that. It just brightened her day. You could tell.
That's awesome.
I forgot what she had said, but it really brightened her day. And I find that just that simple question, man, can make someone's day. Can really make someone's day, and it really does force me to be present. Because I could be there thinking a million different things, not saying anything to who I'm interacting with. But when I have to say something, then I'm engaged. Then we're present. Then we're here now in the moment. So it's paid off. And I actually had a really cool experience. I went to lunch with a local business owner. He owns a CBD company, and he follows some of my stuff on social media. And he heard me. We went to Hoo Hot, of course.
Of course.
And he heard me ask the cook at Hoo Hot while he was getting his stuff. And he's like, my man, practicing what you preach. He's like, I've heard you say that on social media before. And I was like, oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So it was cool to get some of that recognition and acknowledgement. And it was even more motivation of like, I got to practice what I'm preach, you know?
Yeah.
I talk about it and I got to be about it, which I am. But it was just another good reminder of like as much as possible.
Isn't that funny, though, that so many people are kind of surprised when they meet somebody and they actually do what they say they do? Because we have such a facade.
Yeah.
So many people don't, that it's shocking when you actually meet somebody that does what they say they're going to do.
Yeah. Integrity. It's a big thing.
Integrity and just accountability to yourself. Like just being true to yourself and doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think we all right now need to be setting ourselves up to have a great next year. You know what I mean? And in this time between now and 2021, there's so many things you could be afraid of, right? Like if you do any mainstream media, nothing but fear, right? The election, the apocalypse. I mean, you could go on with all this stuff that's scary. So it ties in perfectly to kind of where you're in transition. We're all in transition. How do we take this fear and allow it to propel us forward instead of a fear and being an anchor? Because I think it can do either. Fear is one of those things that's very multi-purpose. Fear can make you do things you didn't know you could do in a positive way. Or it could also it could anchor you and make you shy away from doing anything at all. So first off, how do you know when you're afraid? I think that's something that's important, right? Because I think many people lie to themselves, especially as they get comfortable in life. As we move through our 20s, we get, a little more established in life. We have maybe a safe place to live. We have reliable transportation. We have the food we need. How do you even know if something is making you scared?
Man, that's a great question. How do you know?
right? Because I think like when you're a kid, you know when you're afraid,
Yeah.
and you may not tell everybody, but you can tell your parents, or you could tell like your brother, or your sister. Like there's somebody you talk to because there's not a stigma to being afraid means you're weak. Like you're just like, oh, I'm afraid. Like what is this? Because you don't know. But as we gain experience, sometimes like when we're afraid, we'll pretend it's something else.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm afraid, but man, it's really just not for me. Or nah, this it's just not the right time.
Right.
Right? We have all these excuses. So how do you know when something is actually triggering fear versus logical thinking?
I heard this really cool quote from Game of Thrones. so we're watching that, man. I know I'm like, I don't even know, 10 years late or something, but just started watching
You're still ahead of me because I haven't watched any of it.
Just started watching it, and there's at one point of the season, there's this guy. He's the King of the North, they call him, and he's asked about being brave and how like you have to be fearless to be brave. And he's like, no, there is no bravery without fear. In order to be brave, you must feel fear, because then there's nothing to overcome. There's nothing to be brave about if you're not scared. Being brave means you're scared of something and doing it anyways.
Yeah.
And that really kind of resonated with me because I feel like fear is one of those emotions that can kind of get mixed up with other things of like even like anxiety or laziness. Maybe you might think like, oh, I'm scared. Are you just being lazy, or are you actually scared of doing this? But then when I heard that quote, it made me think about that quite a bit, about like bravery being fear. So now it's like, do I have to be brave to overcome something that I'm actually kind of scared of?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. I don't have a specific textbook answer for this one.
I think that's an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think similar to the definition of courage, right? Courage is not the absence of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Courage is when you're afraid and you do it anyhow.
Right.
But so many people are paralyzed by fear, right? Fear is just an emotion, a feeling that needs to be accompanied by an action, right? When I'm afraid of something, I have the opportunity to act and move forward towards it, which is bravery and courage.
Right.
Or I shy away from it, which is like being paralyzed by fear.
Yeah.
Being dismissive of it, being afraid, being scared to try it.
So here's a good example I just thought of that I want your opinion on how to differentiate. So I'm doing phase 1 of 75 hard right now.
Yeah.
One of the requirements is a 5-minute cold shower every day. And every day when I'm in there, I wouldn't call it fear.
Right. But
I am a little hesitant. I know it's coming, and I have this kind of feeling of I know it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So would you call that fear?
No, that's just a human desire to remain comfortable.
Okay.
Right?
And I think there's a fine line. between the desire to remain comfortable and the actual fear.
Yeah. I would agree with that, but I think you also got to look at two different kinds of fears. There's physical fear, right? Like fear of a bear, fear of lions, fears of sharks, which are a real thing. So we avoid putting ourselves in the ocean, right? If we don't go in the ocean, we never have to face sharks. Fear is handled. But then there's the internal fear. And that's the one that really causes damage to us and that we really need to harness, because you got to remember, like your brain processes stuff and it creates fear. Like it harnesses fear to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. Back from our primitive days, right? Like fear of going from our cave kept us inside. Mm-hmm. Helped us create fire, right? So we could see in the dark. We could heat ourselves. But now as we've progressed into this technological modern age, we don't have near as much physical fears. So what happens is we start creating fear around human behaviors and fear around opportunities. And that's really, to me, what separates a lot of people, right? We're all afraid of something. Mm-hmm. Afraid of public speaking is like the number one fear in the world.
Yeah.
But when's the last time somebody fell over and died public speaking?
Yeah.
Like just got up there and was like, ladies and gentlemen, nobody. So what are we afraid of? It's all imaginary. And that's where we got to get, when those imaginary fears of what could possibly go wrong are so strong that we can't step forward into what could possibly go right.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like I've always been fascinated about it. Literally, the one skill that makes us different from all other animals is our ability to communicate with each other. Right? We can communicate across all species. People from all around the world, we can find some way to communicate. Animals can't do that, right? They communicate in species. Like they can share food, like, I'm about to attack you. Like, we all understand that. So our ability to communicate is our greatest strength. Yet speaking to a large group of people is our biggest fear. And maybe I'm wrong, community chime in if I'm wrong. I have no footage of anybody ever dying public speaking.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right? Like if they did, like, people would watch that. Right? It's like some person somewhere would have made a sport of that. Public speaking, see who dies first. But nobody dies. So what are we so afraid of? Judgments, opinions, not picking the right word. What do they think of me? Am I too fat? Am I too ugly? Is my hair right? We're afraid of all this imaginary stuff that may not even be true.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how we worry so much about other people's opinions when everyone's really just thinking about themselves.
Dude, we're so selfish. But and that's the balance, right? Like, we know the world is so selfish. And we'll go around and tell people, like, they're so selfish. They don't get off their phones. They don't do this. They don't do that. But then we're also always thinking that they think about us. Mm-hmm. Or are they so selfish, or are they thinking about you?
Right.
Because most people aren't doing both.
Yeah.
But fear feeds that to us.
Yeah. So I love it, Jared, when you give personal examples, because you have a lot of life experience.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of different communities in your life. Some disciplined community. I mean, you've done a lot in your journey. So in your life now, what are things that you fear? What are things that cause fear for you, and how do you identify these emotions as fear when they come up?
Right now for me, one of the greatest fears is just the fact that my kids are leaving the nest, right? Which is again, one of those paradigms, right? I've never wanted my kids to feel like they should stay at home forever. But now that they're starting to leave the nest, I'm like, but you could stay kind of closer. You know what I mean? So it's a fear of, did I prepare my children the right way? Did I teach them all the lessons I should have taught them? Was I, kind of like we said, was I practicing to them what I was preaching to them? Did they see that consistency? So that's a big fear, and that's one of the fears, like, I don't control it. Which I think is, to me, one of the hardest fears to handle is when you're involved with something that you don't control the outcomes of.
Yeah.
Which is why coaching fights is so much harder than fighting fights. Like, you go in there, we hug you, we give you your Vaseline, give you some final instructions. You go in, now it's all up to you. But if you get caught in a move that you've never seen, and we're like, shit, we didn't teach them, that's on me. Right? But you go out there and you win, that's that's on you. You did great. So I don't control how you perform. I don't control if you go out there and the lights come on and you just get nervous as fuck.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything. But we all live with the results. But when it's me in there, I'm in control of it. If I get nervous, I'm in control of that. If I see something I should be doing, I'm in control of, can I do it? So I think that's kind of the stage I'm getting to in life, is My kids are older. My communities have grown. There's a lot less dependence on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot less say in outcomes. And I see, did I prepare people properly in their outcomes? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you go into the cage. Well, I am being judged on your performance, which I should be. I'm your coach. My kids leave the house. As a parent, I'm being judged on how do they work their way through society. Not monetarily and status, but are they living dreams? Are they pursuing themselves to be the best they can be, or are they living scared? Well, if they're living scared, then clearly I didn't teach something right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my oldest daughter, I think it was Driana, we were talking, or maybe, no, it was Taya, my youngest. We were having a talk the other day, and I forget how it came up, but I told her, I said, because as a parent, Taya, my biggest regret would be if you tried to live your life to do exactly all the same stuff I did. And not because it's what you've always wanted to do, but because somehow I've taught you that that's all you could be. And she was like, okay. And we talked about it, and then she was out with her friends, and they're seniors, so they're all talking about what are they doing next year or whatever. And she shared that with her friends. And I guess it was completely different than what a lot of her friends had, because they were very much like, do these things just like my parents did, and you'll have this. And to me, I'm like, no, don't do anything. Like, do what I did if that's what you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But then if it's not, like, go do all your other stuff. Like, don't be afraid to be you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's important for me, is because that's what we call, like, what I call transposing fear. And I see it all the time. My fears limit your ability to be great. And you see it at work, believe it or not. Right? So I'm scared. I come to work every day, and I'm worried about what does my boss think and what does my boss's bosses think. I'm not really worried about doing the job. I can do the job. I'm pretty good at the job. But, man, I'm super worried about what they think.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow I do my job well enough, I get promoted. And now I got 6 people under me. But I'm still really, really worried about what my 2 bosses above me think of me. So now I don't want you taking super risk. I want you stay in your box, stay in your box. All you 6, stay in your box. Because if one of you makes a big mistake trying to be great, trying to create something new, man, I don't know what those 2 dudes above me think. So I control you here. My fear is now limiting your potential, and you don't even know it. Transposing fear.
Mm.
You see it in a workplace. You see it in schools. Right? When's the last time a teacher asked a student to be super creative and go outside the box?
Doesn't happen.
Not very often, right? Boom, stay here, stay here, stay here. Why is that? Because I get judged by the people above me. So I hand my fears down. And a lot of times you do it even subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that I would call managing through fear. But I'm so afraid of what people think of me that I need you guys to all do exactly what is prescribed.
Yeah. And the funny thing about fear too is it's never in the present moment, right? I don't think that you can really feel fear when you're completely present, because it's typically something that's always out in the future, right? I mean, like the cage example, you can kind of maybe you have a really tough opponent, kind of scared you're going to get caught in something, have fear of this fight, but as soon as they shut that door and you're going in it, you don't really feel that fear when you're in the event that maybe you had once feared, right? When you're being present. So I think.
But again, that goes back to being present, which is why it's so important for us to train our mind to enjoy the present. Because what are we afraid of?
Something
Usually
in a future time.
Yeah, we're always afraid of what could happen. Well, guess what? Nothing's could happen if nothing happens right now. If I don't do something right now, nothing could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if I shy away from it, if I don't take that opportunity, if I don't talk to that stranger that I've always wanted to meet. I don't make this acquaintance. I don't take this opportunity to go to school or whatever I'm afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then nothing's going to happen. You're right. Nothing's going to happen. Don't be afraid because you didn't act.
Mm-hmm.
But what's on the opposite to me, what's on the opposite of fear? Regret.
Yeah.
Everything I'm afraid of that I don't do, I will probably regret later.
Yeah. Yeah. And that brings me to where I'm at in this crossroads. You know, I've shared with you, and I really haven't shared this with many people, that I am looking to get a small little travel trailer and travel across the country, Texas to Florida, up the East Coast, growing my business, training sales reps, getting them in different markets, going to smoke and vape shops across the nation, getting my products in there. And I'm feeling a little sad and a little scared to leave the communities, the relationships, the people that I built, everything in my life that I've built here in Fort Collins for the past 4 years, in Colorado for the past 5.5 years, and also scared of what if I hate it? What if I hate being in a travel trailer and traveling and not having a stationed home with running water and perfect electricity and everything all the time? What if I don't enjoy that? And that's something that's fearful, but I know that it's something I want to move into, because that uncertainty, that fear lets me know that I'm doing something that's pushing me to grow. And that kind of goes back to that double-edged sword of, is it more fear, or is it more not wanting to experience a certain level of discomfort? And I think there's a fine line between those. In this case, it's definitely a little both.
Yeah. But I mean, I would say that's fear of unknown, right? You don't even know. You're assuming you might be uncomfortable. But you don't know that. You have no experience. It's a what could be. Like, it's possible, but then it's equally possible you might be super comfortable because you don't have to scrape snow off your windshield.
Yeah.
If it starts raining, you just hitch up and drive to the sun. Right? You literally have that flexibility and that freedom to not be uncomfortable. So I think it's interesting. I was thinking down. So you're faced with, this is good for your business. It's something you've planned for a while to expand. So how do you handle expansion? Well, you could stay home based in Fort Collins and fly to all these places, which is a completely different experience. Still uncomfortable.
Well, that's what I know, and I've done that.
Right, but it's not comfortable.
No.
Like getting up many hours early to drive, to wait in line for security, but it's all uncomfortable. Like, nobody enjoys the airport process, or very few people. I don't know. If you enjoy it, hats off to you. I think it's awful. Uncomfortable, but it's an uncomfortable that you know. Mm-hmm. So you do it. Whereas what you're talking about is going into an uncomfortable that you don't know, which now has fear. What if? Well, what's the difference? Let's look at parallels. Fear, so you have the travel trailer and you're on the road. And you got to use the bathroom. Well, now you have your own bathroom right behind you, or you stop at a gas station. Traveling to the airport, you got to use the bathroom. You use somebody else's bathroom anyhow. Like, it's literally the exact same thing, but because I've used the bathroom at the airport, I have no fear about going to the bathroom there. Because I haven't on the road, there's fear. But it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, like, little simple things like that is what we spend time, maybe not even time thinking about, but subconsciously that creates fear. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do if this happens or that happens? And many times none of that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Right? None of the imaginary things we fear actually usually even happen. So we always have the option to think about, okay, man, I'm afraid of what if this happens? And I try to look at the opposite of what if it doesn't happen? Or what if it does happen? So what if my vehicle breaks down in the middle of nowhere? It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens? You got insurance. You call a tow truck. It may take a while. But maybe it's a beautiful part of a desert you've never seen before, and you and Courtney, while you're waiting 2 hours for a tow truck, take fantastic pictures, have a picnic lunch in the desert next to a cactus that, had it not broke down, you'd have driven by and never had that moment.
Right.
It's all possible. So are we do we allow ourselves to be afraid of what could go wrong? Or do we step into the fear of what could go right? Because even when things go wrong, there's usually a reason. There's usually something we're going to take away from it. And, you look at life, at least for me, most of the best things in my life, I had no plans for. I had no magic plan, like this is exactly where I'm going. I just kept showing up and trying to be a good person every day. And I was led different places.
Mm.
But if I'm afraid to pack my car and drive somewhere, well, I never meet Andrea and Driana. If we're afraid to load the Ryder truck or whatever we had and move to Fort Collins where I know nobody, never been to the city of Fort Collins, saw it on ESPN because that's when CSU was good at football and they were on Thursday nights all the time. And I remember seeing their games. So I was like, okay, well, at least I know they have football. We moved here. We didn't know anybody. But if I'm so afraid of what could go wrong, I miss out on the last 21 years of what could go right. I don't meet you if I don't move here.
Yeah. So do you think that there can be healthy fear?
I think fear is absolutely healthy.
Yeah.
Fear is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
If you live your every day and you're afraid of nothing, I don't think you're really living. You're staying in your house. You're watching TV all day, probably. Think about all the fears you technically face every day. Fear of talking to people. Fear of the pain of working out. Fear of, there's so many different fears. I think fear is absolutely necessary. And I think, honestly, handling fear is what separates a lot of people that fulfill dreams and have a very rich and rewarding life from those that watch other people have those kind of lives. It's fear. Do we walk towards it or do we shy away from it? We always have that choice. And you think about what are we told? What sells? Fear sells.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that people use fear to control others, to manipulate others, to sell products to others means it's a very effective tool and it's very present.
Yeah, very powerful.
So what do we do with fear? And that's for me, if I'm afraid of things, not the physical things, like I still don't like sharks either, but if I'm afraid to retire from police work, because, man, it's all I've known for 21 years and provides a steady income and benefits, and I have the same routine every day, I ask myself, what am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of not making as much money. I'm afraid of, oh my gosh, what if I go to the doctor and I don't have as good an insurance? Those are all reasonable fears that I probably should take a risk with, right? Because for the last 21 years, I had this great insurance I spent all this money for and we hardly ever used it. So what the hell good was it? But my fear of not having it would be easy to say, no, I'm going to stay with a job that I don't really want to do anymore. So for me, I know when I'm starting to feel afraid, especially at this stage in my life, it's probably something I should do, which is why I retired. And then, of course, all this shit happened now. So a lot of things I didn't even know I should be afraid of happen.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd have told me when I was retiring 2 years ago that I should be afraid of this thing called COVID-19 and what it's going to do, I'd have been like, dude, I've never heard of it. Now, in our plans, we probably should have plans for, okay, what if we get shut down? What if we get locked down? How do I adapt now in this new world?
Right.
But it all becomes, okay, am I afraid of that world and I hide? Or am I like, okay, now fuck that. I'm going to figure shit out and I'm going to continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all afraid of different things.
Yeah. We're all afraid of different things. So therefore, do you believe that if anybody is feeling fear or experiencing fear, that that's an indicator of something that they should be doing?
I don't know. I think it depends on an individual and what's your past practice. Because I think a lot of people have been taught that fear is bad, fear is to be avoided, or they get taught that when you're afraid, it's okay not to do anything, Johnny, or you're just afraid. Don't worry about Johnny, I'll do it for you. And fear becomes a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I don't want my kids ever to be like, oh, I'm afraid. And I'd be like, okay, well, you don't do it, then Daddy will do it. No, like if you're afraid, why are we afraid? Well, what if this goes wrong? Not a good fear, right? Let's go see if it goes wrong. If it goes wrong, then we're going to learn something, right? Because if you have fear and you act, even if it doesn't work out, you gain experience. And now you change. Well, okay, I tried it this way. It didn't work. Well, oh, this is what I learned. Now I tried it a different way. Oh, now it's a success. So to me, like fear with action gains experience. Fear without action creates regret. So then ask yourself, what do I want to live with? The fear of what might go wrong or the regret of never trying? Period.
I'll take fear any day.
Most people would.
Regret is the worst.
But why do we shy away from that then? Because fear also encourages accountability. I might have to fail. I might have to do things that I think are below me to rebuild things because I took a risk and it didn't work. If that scares you and you're not willing to do those things, then you probably got to stay where you're at.
Yeah.
But if you're okay doing some other shit, try it. Nobody got great doing the same thing they've always done every day. Nobody. So fear should not be an excuse to not move forward. And if we're parenting that way to where every time somebody's afraid or I'm coaching you at the gym and I teach you like, you got to do this to here, and do this. Well, I'm afraid of doing it. Okay, well, you're afraid. Don't do it, Ali. Don't do it then. You're afraid. What kind of coach is that? No, dude, what are you afraid of? What if this happens? Cool, dude, don't overthink it. Do your part first, and if that happens, I'll show you what comes next. Right? But we're so, we want to know, well, if I do this, what do they, and I do this, and I do that. Dude, just get past the first one. The first fear is come in the door. The first fear is show up every day. The first fear is allow yourself to remember you had dreams at some point. What are your dreams, and why are you afraid of them? And I hope that's what a lot of people take away from this crazy year of 2020 is life's short, man. And if you got dreams that are sitting on the shelf, you might want to try. I mean, what do you have to lose?
Right.
You know, if you're just afraid to move forward.
So what do you think about people who are feeling a lot of fear? Because like you said, fear is being manufactured and sold, and fear is a powerful commodity in our world today. I mean, we've had entire markets and governments and economies manipulated because of fear. So when the world collectively is feeling so much fear, how can we as individuals or groups and communities, how can we harness the power of this fear to work for us instead of against us?
It's choice. Right, and I think this is the thing that people don't want common folks like us to know. We always have a choice. Right, we literally have a choice. You can sell me fear all day. Guess what? If I don't consume it, you have no power. I don't like horror movies. I don't like serial killer movies. So guess what? You make all of them you want. Dude, why did it do that again? That's 2 episodes in a row. It just like glitches out. So you make horror movies, you make serial killer movies, you make things that I know I don't like and I don't enjoy. If I don't consume them, you have no power. I don't have to be afraid. You tell me that I should hate my neighbor because they look different than me. I don't consume your material anymore. You have no power. Right? What beats fear is action, right? Personal action. And if people are selling fear for masses, just choose to be happy. Just like you, like when you go in, you ask people what's the best part of their day. It's a choice. And most of the time they choose to accept it and share. Well, what's the fear there, right? Well, talking to a stranger, asking a question, having to listen to an answer, right? That we could all shy away from that. Mm-hmm. But I just think we have choices, man, and we have way more choices than most people want us to realize. And with our choices, with our actions is our power.
Yeah, what a powerful power that we have, the power to choose. I mean, in every moment. And it's funny, we build these illusions around us that make us think we don't have the power to choose, right? I have to do this. I have to go to work. I have to this, that, when really we don't have to do anything.
No, you don't have to do much.
We have the power to choose in every single moment.
You get to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? Think about like even work. I have to go to work. We don't have to. You could quit.
Yeah, I get to.
You get to go to work, which means you get to interact with other human beings. You get to produce a product. You get to work for somebody or with people that have a common vision. You get to work for somebody. Think about most businesses that people work for. That started as somebody's dream. And they had fears. What could go wrong? They had anxiety, and they chose to go forward. Now they've created a business that employs people to allow you to pursue your dreams if you allow yourself to have them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think going back for me all the way to one of your questions earlier is my greatest fear. Also, one of my greatest rewards is seeing my kids embrace fear. You know, my son moving 4 hours away and going to a place he doesn't know one person and wrestling and, you know, going out there and facing his fear of, oh my gosh, am I good enough to be a college wrestler? Am I good enough to be a college student athlete? What's it going to be like to live on my own and doing it?
Yeah.
Right? Because fear didn't keep him in my house. So I encourage you to live a life where you embrace fears and you move towards fear so that those that look to you as a leader also know it's okay to be afraid, but it's also good to move into your fears.
It is. It is. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate with me on this. But, you know, Jared, I think what I fear most is the opposite of fear itself. And I fear getting to the end of my life and having regret.
For sure.
Regret for not doing and experiencing all the things that I wanted in life. Regret for not moving past those fears, moving into those fears, being brave and overcoming these fears. And I feel really grateful to be in a position to where I'm starting to feel fear come up in me more often as I'm preparing for this next season of my life.
Right. Well, think about it. Like, think of the health of that. And that's hopefully something that the community really takes from this episode is the health of fear. Like, Ollie was feeling fearful about this change. But instead of being embarrassed or ashamed of fear, the first thing we talked about today when we came in is that's what you started with. Dude, I'm kind of sad. I'm kind of scared. And we talked about, now you process it. Like, fear is not to be ashamed. Fear, but you got to create these circles to where we all know that fear is healthy, and I can be like, dude, I'm scared shitless. I got this going on.
Yeah.
And you help each other work your way through it. And, you know, look at your community and who's there with you that also embraces fear and also moves forward towards creating and accepting change and really stepping into it versus those that always sit back and play life safe. Because if you're in that second group, obviously they're going to magnify fear for you and they're going to tell you all the things that can go wrong. So, like, think about if you just started that conversation today and I was a person that takes no risk. And I do the same thing I've been doing for 40 years because I like steady, controlled. I'd probably try to talk you out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But because we put ourselves in group where we're all doing different things, we actually process why are we afraid. And that's very healthy. And I think that's where, as a society, we've really dropped the balls. We don't talk about the things we're feeling. Like, we have this facade, especially males, right? I'm super macho. I'm a superhero. I'm not afraid of anything. And we push all that down. And that really creates an imbalance in us.
Yeah.
Mentally, spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah.
Because fear is natural, man.
Oh, for sure.
Your bravest warriors, if you study the bravest warriors of all mankind, usually you can find some good stories of what they were afraid of and how they overcame it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would your story say? What you're afraid of and you never tried? Or what you're afraid of and you learned from the process?
Amen.
All right. And fear shouldn't equate to I have to be successful. Because you're going to fail. And failure is also good. Because when I fail, I get experience. I make modifications. I try again.
Mm-hmm.
But we're so afraid of a lot of that stuff that we don't even move forward. And remember, all the people you think are thinking about you and going to judge you if you fail, they're busy thinking about themselves.
100%.
Especially in today's world.
100%.
So heading into this, man, your biggest fears, what would you say? Because I think we should revisit this again down the road. So you're looking at building your business on the road, starting early in 2021.
Yeah.
Biggest fears and apprehensions you have, or what?
It's funny because the more that we talk about it, the sillier the fear seems, right? It's like, what am I really scared of when you really ask yourself? But I think it's more of a fear of missing and desiring to be back here with a lot of people that I love and enjoy and community. You know, I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss all my teammates, coaches at trials.
Right.
I'm gonna miss a lot of the people that I've built, the communities that I've built around me with my career stuff, Colorado, cannabis industry, Toastmasters. Mainly just missing relationship stuff. But this isn't my first time. You know, it reminds me a lot of the last time I felt this much fear around a big life change and life decision was moving out to Colorado.
Yeah.
You know, I left everything that I knew in Texas and on a smaller scale moving from Denver to Fort Collins, but I hadn't built as much up there. But, you know, we talk about how important community is. And I think that even though I know that wherever I go, I'll be able to integrate and build community and do that, there's just a little bit of fear of it just, you know, never being the same, really. Yeah. Never being the same of leaving a place and people that I love and kind of closing out a chapter.
But isn't that interesting? Because not 6 months ago, we did an episode of you going back to Texas for a wedding with all your boys and getting too crazy. And I think there was a beach involved, right? And so it's interesting, right? We're afraid because those fears you have are legit, right? Like we all feel like, oh, I'm going to miss out. I'm going to miss all these people. But you know from your experience that that's not necessarily the case because literally 6 months ago, you were talking about how you partied too hard with all your buddies from your Texas life. So they're still clearly there.
Yeah.
Even though you've been in Fort Collins for all these years.
Right.
But what I would say, like, also keep in perspective, those relationships are enhanced because now you bring this totally different experience level back to them. Same for us, right? Yeah, I'll miss being able to see you every day. But when we do see each other, I'm going to gain from all the experience you had. Our relationship will be better because you'll have learned so much more that you can share with me. And vice versa. If I take off and go a different route, it doesn't, right? I bring that experience. So that's a way of growing. Yeah. You know, we think about if we're both like, hey, dude, we love each other. We want to see each other every Tuesday at the same time. Well, at some point, we're like, what are we going to talk about today? Yeah. Like right now, we're getting we share a lot through our reading. When we go out on the road, now we create our own experiences. So I think it's an enrichment.
It is.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. You got to get over it. All of us face that fear of just moving.
Right.
And getting out there. Yeah.
Uncertainty.
It is.
Not knowing if it's going to work out, you know.
But I think.
Could have a breakdown in the middle of the road, like you said.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Or it could fucking run amazingly great. And you could find, even if you break down, what if you break down in a small to medium-sized town like Fort Collins, in a state you had no intention of going to, and you meet a business owner who's been just dying for your product but didn't know how to reach you?
I love it.
It's possible.
I love it. And that's the
You know what I
difference
mean?
between something called, that's being pronoid, right? Instead of paranoid, thinking about everything that can go wrong, being pronoid and thinking of all the possibilities that can go right. And this is an interesting experience for me because I don't usually feel fear. And if I do, I'm able to, and I've talked about this in a previous episode, usually anytime I feel fear, one of my ways to manage wherever the fear is coming from or whatever situation is around it, think about the worst case scenario, decide if it does happen, will I survive? Am I willing to risk this? And then if yes, never think about the worst case scenario and then become pronoid about it and try to think about all the insanely amazing things that could go right.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate this conversation and appreciate you and I'm excited and looking forward to
I'm
the next
excited
chapters.
for you, man. I'm excited for everybody's next chapter, as long as our next chapter is not the exact same as the last chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you're, think about that for a second. If you're living your life like it's a book, how many chapters have been the same year after year?
Yeah.
And for some people, they're perfectly happy there. And my hat's off to you. And if you're happy and you're thriving with stability and just being there, then that's good.
Right.
But if inside you're wishing you were doing something else, whether it's job, life, relationships, and you go to bed and the best part of your day is in the dreams because you see what you could be, but you're not living it, let's not keep pushing that off.
Right.
You know, there's no greater time to create the new you than right now.
Amen.
You know,
Amen.
You got some practice for him, Ali?
Yeah. This was more of an impromptu episode for us. I appreciate you letting.
Oh, I love it, man. I love these ones.
Let me kind of roll with what I was feeling this morning. But I was thinking some good purposeful practice for the community for this episode would be to, first of all, take inventory and assess, what do you fear in life? Whether it's current fears, previous fears, take inventory of that. What do you fear in life? Part 2, ask yourself, how can you harness the power of your fears to work in your favor? And then part 3, email us at onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
Awesome. Remember, if you want to go deeper with our community, join us on Patreon. We would love your support to help us continue to push this platform, especially as we get ready to send Mr. Ali off on the road. Will be interesting. You know, everything comes with adjustments. So get in, support the podcast. If we're bringing any benefit and value to you, we greatly appreciate all of you. This was episode, what was this, 82?
82. Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah. Good work. Thanks,
All right,
Jared.
bud. Thank you.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.